So welcome to the program. My name is Marty Schenkman, and I'm joined by a IT guru, Tom, who's going to enlighten all of us about cybersecurity, and we'll introduce Tom more formally in a minute. This is a really important topic that is critical to every professional practice. If you're not addressing these issues, you really need to. And me and Interactive Legal and Peak Trust, who are my co-sponsors, are really trying to offer this program is really a courtesy to help our colleagues, and hopefully it will be of help to you. If you have not downloaded the materials, there's some very good slides and materials that will be available on the web console. You should download them during the program. They'll be posted to each of Peak Interactive and Schenkman Law websites within a few days of the program with the materials, so you can access them. And if any of your friends, colleagues, other people in your firm want to access it, it'll all be there. The title is 8 Defenses to Diffuse Ticking Time Bombs in Your Professional Practice, How to Protect Your Client Data from Hackers, Malware, and so on and so forth. And we're going to talk also specifically for the lawyers about some of the ethics rules for lawyers, accountants, financial advisors, for everybody. Even if those rules don't apply to you because you're not an attorney, it's common sense stuff you want to know. And we're going to talk about one of the IRS publications. The ethics rules for all professions and IRS and FTC rules all mandate that you really pay attention to these matters. There's a growing library of video recordings, webinars on Schenkman Law you can access anytime. There's probably closer to 200 planning clips on Law Easy. We're adding to that all the time. We don't formally give CLE or CP credits, but we do generate a certificate, which you will get after the program. We don't generate the certificates. They come through the system, so we can't assist if there's anything incorrect on your certificate. The best way to reach really Tom is the brains here on, if you have any questions, is to email him directly. His email's on the last slide. General disclaimer we'll skip, and let me ask Vanessa, one of our sponsors, to say a quick word.
Thanks, Marty. Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Knega. I'm the CEO of Interactive Legal. If you're not familiar with us, we provide automated drafting solutions as well as education and other resources to estate planning and elder law attorneys. We'd love to show you a demo of our system. You can reach us by emailing the address shown on your screen or reach us at interactivelegal.com. There's a request a demo button. I just want to say that as a provider of web-based services to attorneys, we obviously take cybersecurity very seriously, but I know how difficult this topic can be to maneuver, especially when you're trying to manage a law practice. So I want to applaud everybody for taking the time to be here and thank Marty and Tom for presenting this today. Thanks very much for allowing us to sponsor.
Our pleasure. Thank you, Vanessa. And Nicole for Peak Trust.
Yeah, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's very important webinar on cybersecurity. My name is Nicole King. I'm a trust officer here at Peak, and we are pleased and honored to sponsor today's presentation. Just a little bit about Peak Trust. We offer a full spectrum of trustee services, specializing in the administration for trusts in Alaska, Nevada, and Delaware. We're able to provide a highly customized delivery process tailored to your clients' specific needs, providing everything they need, but only what they want. So I invite you to visit our website at www.peaktrust.com for more information. Please feel free to contact me or any member on our team. So thank you, Tom and Marty, for today's presentation. I hope you all enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Nicole. And Tom, so I think you should tell everybody who you are. And I will preface this by saying Tom normally wears a suit and tie and button-down collared shirt to work, but he felt that for the video, he wouldn't look like a real IT guy, so he dressed down to a t-shirt so you would think he's a real IT guy. With that little bit of background, Tom, tell everyone who you are and who BabaGuard is.
Thank you. Yes, I'm the CEO and founder of two companies serving the legal vertical. The first is a company I started in 2006 called Global Mac IT. And that company is a nationwide full-service managed service provider that helps high-growth law firms who exclusively use Mac-based technology. So we do outsourced IT for law firms that use Macs with about 10 to 50 people. And then the second company is BobaGuard, which I started 2 years ago. And this is a cybersecurity suite that was built specifically to meet the needs of solo lawyers and small to mid-sized law firms, whether they use Macs or PCs. And that was really born out of just insights that I had running Global Mac IT. I realized that a lot of solo, especially solo and small law firms, as well as mid-sized firms, just don't have an easy way to kind of tackle the cybersecurity threat.
And the beauty of what, not meaning this to be an ad, but the beauty of what Tom and his firm BobaGuard do is if you're running a practice, you're incredibly busy. It's hard enough keeping up with client matters. Certainly in 2020 and 2021, it's been a little quieter now, but the proposed legislation had us all, doing backflips trying to keep up with the latest proposals that seem to change almost every day or week. You don't have the time to deal with this stuff. So to get a package solution where all the critical issues, it seems to be all the critical issues, and Tom's going to go through it, that you need to address to keep your practice safe and your client data safe is really practical and useful. So hopefully you'll find the explanations that Tom gives as we go through this useful. Let me just by way of introduction, couple, and again, I know this is appropriate for lawyers, but if you're an accountant or a financial advisor, you want to address the same concepts. The lawyer ethics rules provide that we should fully inform a client of where and when their data may be stored. We have to communicate with clients appropriately. We have to advise them as to the status of their matters and so on. And how we do that will depend on the IT environment. Tech provides a myriad of ways to address all these things. We use in my practice our firm website to communicate. We use email, as you all do, to communicate. We use entries in our billing system to communicate, so on and so forth. So all that data has to be protected. Tom's going to mention in a few minutes a later ethics opinion, but I just kind of wanted to introduce the topic with Ethics Opinion 477, which updated some outdated, older tech ethics opinions. And what it does is it requires that you have to have security for every device, every storage location that you have. You have to assess the benefits and risks associated with relevant technology. And one of the things that I recommend to try to encourage people as a means of practically meeting this, because as practicing lawyers, unless you have a full-time office manager with IT experience, even better, a full-time IT person, and then you're already into a somewhat larger firm. But if you don't have those facilities, which I don't have, getting communications from somebody like Tom as to what you need to do, getting a package where you know that even just from the advertising and the breadth of what it covers, that you've covered most, if not all, of the issues you have to cover, I think helps demonstrate that you've met the last bullet point on slide 10, that you've taken reasonable efforts to ensure that communications and data for clients is secure. What is reasonable efforts? So I think that as lawyers, you could take a look at some of the ABA materials. As tax practitioners, which I think everyone who does estate planning you'll see the IRS publication coming up. I think we all need to be vigilant, and Tom's going to talk about some of those things. You have to be mindful of how you use email. If you don't have encryption to use for email, you need to address that immediately. You need to understand the nature of the threat, the confidential information that's being transmitted. A general communication email, I don't know and don't think and don't believe has to be encrypted. And frankly, I think it frustrates clients and colleagues when a general communication email's not encrypted. I think if you're sending a gift tax return that's got tax ID numbers, not only for the client, but for entities and trusts, that really should be encrypted. What has to be encrypted in between, I think is a little more gray and subject to some interpretation, but you certainly need to understand and have the ability to address these matters. Now, IRS publication 4557 talks about safeguarding taxpayer data. And I think and again, just a thought, and I hate to ever set a standard of practice that could make a problem for a colleague, but I think that we all have to address what's in this publication. If we don't meet requirements of the minimum standards that are in a public booklet put out by the IRS on cybersecurity for client tax data, I think we're gonna face an issue. I think you want to make sure that you've met this. And by the way, this publication, which you can go to irs.gov and get it for free, has an incredible checklist at the end that you may find very helpful if this stuff is not your expertise and you don't have an IT person in house. And Tom is going to go through probably most of those concepts in his part of the presentation, which we'll get to in a minute. No surprise to anyone, data theft against tax professionals is on the rise. Addressing data security is essential. And this is important, not just for the largest firms, firms of all sizes, including solo practitioners. When the IRS has that in print in a publication available to the masses, what that tells me is you can't say, "Oh, I'm a solo practitioner. I can't do what bigger firms do." You're not excluded from meeting the minimum requirements for data security. And if you do any kind of estate or other planning tax returns, client tax data is going to be in your file. The IRS recommends you hire data security experts, buy cybersecurity insurance, and educate your staff. 3 things that we all need to take a look at. And Tom may elaborate on some of those, certainly as to the education. Tax preparers must create a written information security plan to protect client data. I don't know if Tom had it in his materials, forgive me, but he can mention that when he talks. Basic security steps, and Tom is going to go through a lot of these and explain them in much more detail, but you got to learn to recognize phishing emails. You got to have a written security plan like we just said. You got to review internal controls. You have to have anti-malware, antivirus security on all devices, not just your computers, but your phones, your tablets, everything. You have to encrypt sensitive files and emails. You have to back up sensitive data. You got to have a good backup plan so that if there's a problem, ransomware, you have plenty of old backups to go to restore your data. This was interesting, withdraw from any outstanding authorization. So if a client gave you a power of attorney for tax information and you've terminated the client or the client's terminated you, you may want to withdraw from that. You also are obligated to report suspected data theft to the IRS immediately, and I'm going to have a few more comments on that in a second. Tom's going to cover most of the security software in much better depth, but the IRS publication has some good definitions and explanations if this is kind of new stuff for you. Other steps using strong passwords, multi-factor authentication. We all find it a pain in the neck, but it's here and we got to use it. Secure your wireless network, secure and protect stored client data. They caution never to take free software. Now, the last bullet point, I want to take a second and belabor. In the IRS publication, it says use separate personal and business email accounts. Separate business and personal email accounts. I frequently find that many of our colleagues, many of you who I know, when we're conversing about personal non-business matters, are using business email. You really want to try to do everything you can to separate business and personal email. What I've done for personal email is we've gotten the same caliber of an account with a private domain and have the same security set up for my personal email as for my business, because I want to protect that too. You have to report data breaches. I'm sorry, the first typo, it's IRS, not RS. You have to report data breaches to the IRS, to the FBI, file a police report. If you file state income tax returns, and if you're an attorney, you may not file income tax returns, but you may file state e-state tax returns. You got to report the data breach to the states and maybe even the AG in the state where you are. If you have a breach, you immediately need to retain a cybersecurity expert to assess the breach, and you should report it to your insurance company because you should have cybersecurity insurance. It is not included, certainly not where I've seen, in the comprehensive office package that many of us get. You need separate coverage. You may have to comply with FTC rules. So with that, I want to turn it over to Tom, who's going to enlighten you from a technical perspective I just wanted to set the stage that whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, a trust officer, this stuff is critically important, and you should really take a look. It's free. It'll take literally, you can thumb through it in 10 minutes online, the IRS publication I cited, and see what's really required in the public record that your clients can easily access to. You don't want to have less than that. Tom, take it away.
Thank you. No, that's a great way to set the stage. Everyone, thank you for joining us today. Every single thing he touched on, we're going to dive into. And I think the important thing that the way I go about giving this presentation, it's not going to be filled with 50-cent words that are over your head. My intention is not to only put the fear of God in you. I'm going to do a little bit of that too, but we're really going to focus on, solutions and how do you address and how do you protect yourself. One key thing that Martin alluded to as well is that a lot of the terminology here is going to be focused at lawyers specifically. But people ask me sometimes, they say, hey, is Beauregard and is the information you're talking about specific to lawyers? And the truth is, it's really not. That just happens to be the vertical I've been in for the past 17 years, and that's where my core market is. But we've got plenty of clients who are non-lawyers, using Beauregard. Every single bit of advice and information here applies to you 100%, whether you're an attorney or not. So, whatever you are, I just don't want you to have a subconscious filter. It's like, oh, well, I'm not an attorney, so that doesn't apply to me. Whatever you are, replace the word lawyer or attorney and just fill in, your role, your profession, and it applies directly. So, again, we're going to talk about the 8 defenses to diffuse the ticking time bombs in your professional practice, how to protect your client data from hackers, malware, ransomware, and other digital threats. Now, before we jump into this, I always ask to get a show of hands. You can, make a comment in the chat box here. Just put me or I, but how many of you have suffered a data breach or know someone, directly who has? And I ask this because I've had countless consultations with lawyers over the past 17 years where they shared with me a close call they experienced or a direct tale from a colleague, in their building or in a group that they're in. And if you have had it happen, you know how scary it is. And if you haven't, you might be thinking it's not going to happen to you, but that is not the truth. In fact, an ABA report showed that 29% of law firms have suffered a data breach. My belief is that it's a lot higher than that. The 29% are the ones who admitted to it. And the truth is, it's only going to get worse. Cyber criminals are getting more and more sophisticated, and you are a target, whether you think you are or not. But the good news is today, I'm going to share with you exactly what you need to do so you don't become a victim. So today, you're going to discover the most modern and effective methods that you can use to stop cyber criminals dead in their tracks. You're also going to learn the 8 cybersecurity solutions I recommend to greatly reduce your risk of getting hacked, and the easiest way to add massive protection in the least amount of time possible. This presentation is for you today if you're solo or small or mid-sized law firm attorney or a CPA or a professional or office administrator. It's also for you if you believe you have an ethical duty to protect your client data, and if you want to be proactive instead of reactive so you can sleep well at night and not have to worry about this stuff. And lastly, it's for you if you want to do everything you can to protect your firm or your business and your client data so that you never have to tell your clients their data has fallen into the hands of cyber criminals. Now, why is all this so mission critical? Right now, Putin is knocking on our door. He's not being covert. He's not, he's not making any attempt to hide it. And in addition, there's countless crime organizations, both governmental and private, that are trying to hide it. And the United States is actually the single biggest target for cyber criminals, attracting 23% of the global attacks. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, but they're not coming after me. I'm just a solo or a small law firm. The truth is that cyber criminals are extremely tech savvy. They're leveraging artificial intelligence, which allows them to work at scale. And this allows them to target tens of thousands of companies and small businesses on an ongoing basis. They really don't care what size you are, but they do care and are well aware that you practice law or taxes or whatever field you're in that has all the juicy, good, valuable information they're after, such as trade secrets, social security numbers, bank account numbers, personally identifiable information, PII. And these types of data are very hot items on the dark web. And according to Security Magazine, more than 70% of attacks specifically target small businesses. Now, as a result of this type of activity, 1 out of every 3 lawyers has actually openly admitted to being hacked. So I want you to think about that. The next time you're out to lunch with a colleague or a couple colleagues, I want you to consider the fact that 1 of the 3 of you has already been hacked, whether you know it or not. I also want you to consider the reputational and financial carnage that's created by suffering a data breach. It is devastating. And we're going to talk about some real world examples today that's really going to get you, kind of thinking and realizing what the impact would be. Now, the other reason this is mission critical, it goes to the good old model rules of professional conduct. So in October of 2018, Formal Opinion 483 was issued by the ABA to reaffirm and enlarge the Rule 1.6C's requirements. And so here it says, when a data breach occurs involving or having a substantial likelihood of involving material client information, lawyers have a duty to notify clients of the breach and to take other reasonable steps consistent with their obligations under these model rules. So, Model Rule 1.6 includes non-exclusive factors to guide lawyers in making a reasonable efforts determination. So again, what does that word mean, right? The reasonable efforts. So first off, what you want to consider is the sensitivity of the information. So if we look at the words again, reasonable steps, the big question they raise is what qualifies as reasonable steps? Per the ABA, one of the major factors that disciplinary bodies can use in determining whether the steps you took to safeguard data were reasonable is a sensitivity of the information. So the greater the sensitivity, the bigger the steps you're expected to make. Of all the information in your possession, the most sensitive is going to be the personal identifiable stuff. So client names, addresses, social security numbers, financial and health records, employment histories, and the like. Because you collected this highly sensitive data, you need to show that you tried really, really hard to prevent theft or loss in the event theft or loss occurs. The next one on the list is the likelihood of disclosure if additional safeguards are not employed. So, as we covered, cyber statistics show that 29% of law firms have had a data breach. What does this tell you? It tells you that amongst this 29% of all law firms, some have implemented safeguards and some have not. Now, it also tells you that if a data breach has affected nearly 1 in 3 law firms, despite some of them using security safeguards, then the ones not using additional safeguards must be running a sky-high risk of a breach. Therefore, firms with no additional safeguards have failed to take reasonable steps to prevent disclosure. So again, is this you? And then the third and fourth items on their list of non-exclusive factors to guide lawyers in making a reasonable efforts determination are the cost of employing additional safeguards and the difficulty of implementing the safeguards. Now, for a lot of small firm lawyers or small professional practitioners, in the past, it's been too expensive to obtain sufficient protection, and it's a huge hassle for the same reason, because the only way to lay hands on good protection has been from vendors exclusively focused on selling to medium and large law firms. So in other words, only the large firms have had the resources to track down, afford, and implement adequate additional safeguards. Up until now, there has not been a cybersecurity vendor that has specifically built an easy to implement solution that any solo or small firm or small business can afford and implement. And the last factor listed is the extent to which the safeguards adversely affect the lawyer's ability to represent clients, right? So for example, making a device or important piece of software excessively difficult to use. So the idea here is that you can't be held to the Rule 1.6C standard of care if the only available safeguards are beyond your level of technical know-how. However, the solutions we're going to discuss today have done-for-you implementation options. Many of them operate in the background 24/7 looking out for you without making it any more difficult to practice law. And so this is why today's presentation is mission critical for everyone. Today, I'm going to be sharing a few real world examples, and I want to start by painting a vivid picture for you. And by the way, this is based on real events, just like you see on the TV shows. So I
Let me
want you
just
to,
interject. Let me just interject a quick comment. Don't worry that your clients are going to react negatively. Oh, golly, it's an encrypted email and I have to get the encrypted email. Or that there's a password to get into a web-based meeting. I think especially post-COVID, clients have really gotten used to using more technology, even older clients that we as estate planners work with. Accountants are, in my view, way ahead of where lawyers are, and financial planners are probably way ahead of them. But other professions have really implemented more of these security measures. Accounting firms have been using secure web portals for transmitting sensitive tax data for years. You're not breaking, if you're an attorney, the headwinds. You're not having to create new perspectives by your clients. That's already happened. So whatever profession you're in, I think the clients are there, because I know that one of the hesitations we all have is, gee, you know, if I'm going to frustrate especially an older client that's not tech savvy, it doesn't have to be and it won't be. So that's not going to be the impediment to getting this done.
yeah, and I would challenge it's actually the opposite impact. It's like, sometimes I work with a business, I'm like, oh my gosh, when I get an email from, Boston attorney at yahoo.com,
Bad.
that makes me think the opposite. Like, oh man, how I'm not going to send any of my sensitive information to a public, email account. So I think showing that you have, security measures in place actually wins you points and elevates how your
Yes.
clients see you, because they go, wow, they value the sensitive of my information, and they're taking additional measures that the other firm I worked with wasn't taking before. So I think these are definitely a pro, to have these in place. So I want you to imagine here, you're getting into the office on a Monday morning and you're starting to plan out your week and you're reviewing your client matters, kind of doing your planning. And out of the blue, you receive a text message from your bank. However, this one is different. This is a security alert. You quickly call in to find out what's going on, and they tell you that money has been transferred out of your IOLTA account to a foreign account in China. Now, that is just the tip of the iceberg. The bank then tells you that the money is lost. They cannot help you get it back, and neither can the feds. This kind of sinks in, and an overwhelming feeling of dread, really grows as you start to contemplate the impact of what just happened. Next up, what you're going to need to do is notify your cyber insurance provider and open a claim with them. What they're going to do is bring in forensic experts to find out exactly what happened and determine what else might have been compromised. They will try to determine when the breached access began, how long it lasted, and what services and data were compromised. Now, by the way, at this point, you've had to shut down your operations completely until further notice while they assess the damage. It's kind of like working on an engine working on the engine while the car's running. You can't do that. You got to shut off the engine, and then they can get in, look at everything top to bottom. So your operations are shut down. In addition, eventually you're going to need to file a notice of a data breach with your local district attorney's office. Now, I don't need to remind you this, but this is a publicly available document that can show up in search results for other prospective clients or referral sources, or let's say you want to sell your law firm and they're doing their due diligence. These things are going to come up for years to come. So it's going to be highly likely you're also going to need to hire a public relations advisor to help you mitigate the damage. And let's not forget the letters that need to be sent out to every single contact. Now, notice that it's very important here. It's not just current and past clients, but this is every single contact in your database, opposing counsel, judges, referral sources. Every contact is going to get this letter, okay? So it goes far beyond just your clients. You're also going to be responsible for providing mandatory credit monitoring for customers whose data was compromised. And this is an average cost of $225 per record. So I hope you can imagine here how quickly the cost of a data breach can rack up for you. So this is why you simply must carry a cybersecurity insurance policy nowadays, in addition to a solid cybersecurity strategy. We all carry car insurance, hoping we're never going to need to use it. Now, you might be wondering, hey, Tom, you're just fear mongering. You're damn right I am, is the truth. The truth is when I first started this company, I used to shy away and I was really self-conscious about being seen as a fearmonger. And the thing is, this is just one firsthand story. And I know from spending 17 years working with lawyers that most of them truly believe it's not going to happen to them. They continue living in denial until they get that phone call out of the blue one day. And I believe it's my responsibility and moral duty to do everything that I can to protect you. And the good news is that if you do what I ask you to do, what today, what I just talked about does not have to happen to you. Now, another really important truth here. You will never be able to secure your practice from cyber threats and the risks of a data breach 100%. If any security solution provider makes this type of claim, please run the other way because that's impossible. Just like Tesla's great cars, they are the safest cars on the road. They've achieved the highest safety ratings ever, but no car can ever be 100% safe. Now, that being said, what you can do is drastically reduce your risk using affordable solutions. So, and the best way to go about doing that is by using layered security. Now, a layered security approach is similar to the approach portrayed in the classic heist movies, right? Think The Italian Job or Ocean's 11, where a team of burglars must get past obstacle after obstacle, right? Each providing its own challenge before they finally manage to gain access to the valuable jewels and then make off into the night. In order for the burglars to get their prize, it's not enough for them to defeat one layer. They have to get past all of the layers of security protecting the jewels. And so that is what a layered cybersecurity approach is comprised of. So here are the 8 layers of security that you need to have in place. So the first one is cybersecurity training, phishing simulations, IT security policies, dark web monitoring, the team-based password vault, proactive maintenance with patching for Mac and PCs with antivirus and web protection, cloud-to-cloud SaaS backup for Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace, and lastly, an automated phishing defense platform. Now, we're going to go through all 8 of these today, but first, I want to share a true story that illustrates why you need all 8 of them. David Eltringham, I want to introduce him. He's one of our current clients, and he's the managing partner of a personal injury firm down in Florida. And I'm going to share with you what happened shortly before we began helping him with his cybersecurity. So here's a case study from David. This is directly from his mouth here. We were with a different IT provider, an hourly pay-as-you-go type, and got badly hacked. The funds in our trust account were almost transferred to Hong Kong. He got extremely lucky, by the way, that they were able to interfere and stop the transfer. When they talked to the FBI, they told him how lucky they were, and this rarely happens. Usually when this kind of thing happens, the money's gone and there's no getting it back. That was the aha moment. What we had been doing was not working, and we needed to do something entirely different. You can't imagine the carnage that does to a small business having to send out that kind of letter. As a result, the phone stopped ringing. But what was really freaky for me was when I got the list of the stuff we didn't have and had never heard of that we should have been doing. Our liability would have been off the charts for negligence. It would have been potentially gross negligence because of the exhaustive list of stuff we didn't have to adequately and reasonably protect ourselves. At the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know. And for a law firm to say, well, gee, we had no idea. I mean, how does that play in court? So let's jump in. So security layer number 1 is cybersecurity.
I think you've gotten everybody's attention, and it doesn't matter what profession you're in, folks. This is awful. And every one of us has seen multiple emails over the recent years from colleagues saying, don't open an email, we've been hacked. We've all seen that. It's bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's bad.
I get them on a regular basis for other law firms who I'm on their list, somehow. And boom, I get that email. It's like, hey, here's a very important message. Go ahead and click and open it. And I was like, oh, they've been hacked. They've been hacked. I mean, it's continual. So the first one is cybersecurity training. And if your employees are trained and knowledgeable about cybersecurity risks, they'll be better equipped to protect your data. Right? Now, really important thing is that if your team doesn't retain the lessons, the training is worthless. So I want to push, first, do you have cybersecurity training? But second, I have found there's a tremendous amount of ineffective cybersecurity training. What most people think of when I say those words, cybersecurity training, is a feeling of dread. Is like, oh gosh, not another 1 hour monotone, boring, dull, training that I have to sit through. Because that's how most of them have been historically. And so the best trainings use techniques like storytelling to educate your team members on what to look out for in a fun and engaging way. How can cybersecurity training be fun and engaging? They found ways to do it. So now that they can be cartoon based, where they're actually telling stories versus just explaining 50-cent words and what to do and what not to do. They're a lot shorter, so 5, 10, 15-minute training sessions once a month given over time are going to be much more effective than a annual cybersecurity training that everyone has to sit through for an hour, right? And it's really important that they understand and retain the information. The more you can train everyone on your team, the better protection you're going to have. So the second security layer is our phishing simulations. And not many people know this even exists. But first, the basics. What is phishing? Phishing is a method used by cyber criminals to get your credentials, right, through impersonating a company or a person. There's a whole bunch of different methods. You might have heard of spear phishing. There's smishing. There's vishing, and so on. There's all kinds, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that sound funny. But the point is, they're all versions of phishing, and it is a huge threat vector. And phishing simulation is a newer solution where you have a trusted cybersecurity partner send phishing emails to everyone in your firm so that you can find out exactly who is clicking on emails, who is entering credentials, and specifically who needs additional training, who is the weakest link. And this is really important because 91% of successful data breaches started with a spear phishing attack. So you've got to be running phishing simulations to see how your employees are doing, find out who's struggling and who's leading the charge with security. If you're not doing phishing simulations, I guarantee there's people in your firm clicking on links, entering credentials, and all it takes is one time.
Let me interject two really quick comments. First, folks, I am shocked at how incredibly real some of these phishing emails are. I mean, they got the logos, the lingo. It's difficult to spot some of them. There have been some that have come through from what look like really important, reputable contacts of ours. I've actually forwarded the email to my IT firm and said, "Is this real?" And so far, none of them that I was suspicious of were. It doesn't take much. And I want to re-emphasize a term that Tom used, which is critically important: the weakest link. You can't leave out anybody in your firm because the weakest link, any person, well, they're not important or they're not having client, it doesn't matter. Anybody in the whole umbrella of your firm could prove to be the weakest link. Everybody needs to get addressed in this training.
Yeah, definitely. We've got some good stories that'll kind of demonstrate that and help drive it home. All it takes is one person, one time to grant access to your data. So it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what role they're in, like Marty said. And so we're going to talk about this. And I think the point he made is that, 5 years ago, the logos were pixelated. There were obvious typos. Nowadays, these cyber criminals, I don't care what country they're in, they've got access to Grammarly that check their spelling. They can choose American dialect, and they can fix 80% of the errors they used to have, right? One of my, a good friend, he runs a really successful podcast for entrepreneurial lawyers. And the day he interviewed me for Beauregard for his podcast, he fell for a phishing email that afternoon. And he is very tech savvy, in the top 5%. I would easily put him in terms of lawyers. And he's the kind of guy that would have said up until then, "Oh, don't worry, I'll never fall for a phishing email. I know what to look for." And this time what happened, he got an email from a colleague, someone they do a lot of work together. And email looked exactly the same. Email, the signature was exactly as it usually is. So it didn't raise any flags. Clicked on the link, went to the website, which was a perfect replica of this colleague's website. And so again, all the no flags went off. So he's like, okay, cool. He put in his credentials, and right after he did it, he realized what he did. He's like, oh man, I just fell for a phishing email. I just gave up my credentials to Microsoft 365. So luckily for him, he knew it instantly. He went back in and locked it down, changed his password and all that. But again, if he can fall for it, anybody can fall for it. So I don't care who you are, how good you think you are, myself included. And we're going to talk about different reasons why. So phishing simulations are a really, really helpful tool to use. The next one is not an exciting one, but it's crucial, and these are IT security policies. So every business needs written policies to establish basic security practices for employees, such as requiring strong passwords, appropriate internet use guidelines that detail penalties for violating company cybersecurity policies, and rules of behavior describing how to handle and protect customer information and other vital data. In fact, 25% of firms with 2 to 9 lawyers and 58% of solos do not have the security policies needed. Now, I know very few solo lawyers nowadays where it's only them working on 100% of the client matters. Right? They might have a part-time assistant or a part-time paralegal or a virtual paralegal. So, everybody needs to have these policies in place. And at a minimum, you want to have an acceptable use, business continuity, incident response plan, records management, how long are you retaining information for, mobile devices, and passwords. So security layer number 4 is dark web monitoring. So what is the dark web? Everyone's heard about it. They know it's scary and it's bad. I like to simplify things. I call the dark web the Amazon for cyber criminals. If you want drugs, weapons, stolen credit cards, credentials for websites, you got it. There's also a whole lot of other far worse stuff that I won't even mention. Now, when a third-party website gets hacked and the credentials are stolen, the criminals have not yet been paid. They then take that data to their marketplace, the dark web, and they list it for sale. Other criminals come in and they say, hey, I'll take $1 million from the Chase hack. Those are a little more expensive, but there's a good ROI on those. I'll take 100,000 from Target. I'll take $2 million from Netflix. They just pick and choose from varying breaches, and then they go to work trying to get into your accounts. So I want you to imagine that you became aware that robbers had a copy of your home key and were able to get in at will. First question, would you want to know? Second question, once you knew, how long would you wait to change the locks? So essentially that is what dark web scanning does for you. So it's continually scanning the dark web, all the huge data dumps from stolen credentials that are listed for sale, and they've got a back way to kind of monitor all that. And as soon as they find a hit with your email address, you get notified. So it says, hey Marty, we got a new set of credentials found. Is this a password you're currently using? If it is, you want to go out and change it everywhere you have that password in use. So
let me interject, folks. This is very real. I would like to think I'm pretty careful. I would like to think that I've had pretty robust cybersecurity for a number of years. I've always done whatever my IT people have recommended, even though the cost has sometimes concerned me. We have had dark web monitoring for years, just like Tom said, and I think it was only once, maybe it was twice, got an email saying that particular passwords were appearing on the dark web associated with us. And one of the passwords was so old that we hadn't used it anywhere, and we checked. We have the ability to do that. And the other password, I think, was on one sort of obscure account that we don't use much. We immediately changed it. And what we also did is looked at passwords, and Tom's going to give you a better solution than what I'm doing. We looked at passwords that were similar and changed those. So this is real. This is real, folks. It happens.
Definitely. And the key part is, even if you're you have the best cybersecurity hygiene, this is stuff that's completely out of your control, right? You have no control if Netflix gets breached, right? But all of a sudden, if that's a password you reuse, and we're going to talk about that on the next slide actually, then you're at risk. So 61% of breaches involve credential data. And so you've got to monitor 24/7, 365 for compromised account data on your primary company domain as well as your personal email account. Okay? I'm going to tell you something you're not going to like, but it's the truth. Those 3 slightly altered passwords that the majority of you watching this right now are using are likely already on the dark web. Again, I've been in the IT space in the legal world for 17 years, and I know for a fact people do this. So you started with your first password you created, 15 years ago, and then we'll say password. It might be a combination of your birth date or your kids' names or your pet, whatever. And you take that first password, and at one point the website said, hey, that's not secure enough. You got to add some numbers. So you said, okay, I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's complex. Most people would probably just put a 1 at the end and called it a day because it's easy to remember. Then a few months later, maybe your bank is like, hey, that's not secure enough. You need to add some special characters. So here's what you might have done. You might have gone, I know what I'll do. No one's going to think of this. I'm going to change the S's into $signs and the O into a 0. Ha! No one will ever get that. That's not predictable at all, right? So I say tongue in cheek, but I know that many of you are reusing just a few passwords that are slightly altered. And if a cyber criminal gets any one of those passwords, in a matter of minutes, they can have all the different variations, and it's extremely likely they're going to have guessed the minor changes that you made, because humans are extremely predictable. So I want to tell you the true story here. Shannon was a solo family law attorney in California. And believing that her practice was too small to be targeted, she hardly bothered with online security practices until May 5th, 2018. She discovered evidence of unauthorized access to mycase.com, which was their case management software. She was forced to notify the authorities, her clients, and all related parties that their data had been compromised. What you see here is the actual, publicly available notice of a data breach. And the second highlighted section I want to read here. Client data was potentially accessed. Client case information was deleted, and other administrative changes were made to the system. Again, I want you to imagine having to go through this. This is no joke. Every time I read that, it never gets old. Like, I just get a feeling in the pit of my stomach, like, oh my God, to find out that client case information was deleted, it's horrific to me. And let's talk about what she could have done to prevent this. Now, although Shannon was not my client, I decided to do some investigating to determine if she could have avoided what happened to her. So using our dark web scan tool, I did a search on her law firm domain, and sure enough, a single set of credentials was posted on the dark web only 49 days before the data breach occurred. Not a whole bunch of credentials, just a single one, and that's all it takes. Now, at first glance, you can see here the password here is hashed, which means it's actually still encrypted, right? You might look at the password and go, wow, she had a really long, super secure password. So that was not her password. That was the encrypted password. Now, if you think about business here, you can imagine that criminals get paid a lot more when they deliver unencrypted passwords. So some people's jobs are to find ways to unencrypt entire data sets, right? I downloaded 200,000 credentials from Netflix, but they're encrypted. If I can find the key to unencrypt them, now they're worth a whole lot more. So once they find these keys, they make these unlock keys, free to the public. So I copied and entered that encrypted password in an online tool, as you'll see on the next slide. And it immediately showed me her password was Shannon in the bottom right. If it didn't have the key, it would have come back red and said, nope, we don't have the key, but they did. So her password was Shannon, her first name, all lowercase. If she had been using dark web monitoring, she would have been notified of her password that came up in the dark web 49 days prior, and she could have promptly changed anywhere she was using that password before the data breach occurred, and completely avoided the nightmare that damaged her reputation, her firm, and years of hard work. So the next security layer is a team-based password vault. So according to a Google security study in 2019, as many as 65% of people, I don't always like percentages, 2 out of 3 people, right? To me, that's more real. 2 out of 3 people reuse the same password for multiple or all accounts. Using a password management tool will help you to stop insecure password sharing. That one time you sent an email, that's a huge risk, and I'll tell you why in a story a few slides later. It's going to help you create unique passwords, securely store all work-related passwords, and access and share passwords with colleagues. Now, the bottom line, if your firm does not use a password management tool, you are in severe risk. And so as a result, if you're not using a tool that can help you create really complex, unique passwords and store them and fill them in automatically, you are very likely to be using and reusing the same 2 to 3 passwords because there's only so much information we can retain. If one gets stolen via third party and listed on the dark web, multiple firm accounts are now at risk. Using unique passwords minimizes the potential impact significantly. The next security layer, number 6, is a mouthful, but it's proactive monitoring, maintenance, and patching for Macs and PCs with antivirus and web protection. So this one tool has a whole bunch kind of packed into it, and this checks off a lot of the boxes that Marty shared earlier from the IRS recommendations. Okay, so first thing it's going to do is automate your operating system updates, third-party software updates, and security patches for Mac OS or and Windows computers. So you always hear you should keep your computers up to date. There were a few lines on the IRS recommendations. That part takes care of this. The second thing it does is it's going to monitor. The monitoring notifies you of IT incidents before they become catastrophic, right? Like a hard drive starting to fail, or battery issues, or other potential problems before they stop you dead in your tracks. And you show up to court, and you turn on your computer, and it doesn't turn on. The next one is antivirus. Anti-spyware and malware. It covers and protects you from all that on your computer. And the last is DNS web protection, which blocks malicious URL domains. And what that means is that if someone clicks on a link, which leads them to a malicious website, it's very likely it's going to be blocked. The DNS web protection tools are continually updated. I mean, millions of bad websites and IP addresses. And so if you go to one of these, it's automatically blocked. Again, it's just one additional security layer looking out for you 24/7. The next one, security layer number 7, is cloud-to-cloud SaaS backup for Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. And again, SaaS is security as software as a service. I'm in the security mindset. And so 77% of companies using cloud applications have suffered a data loss incident over the past 12-month period. It's really important to point out here that Google and Microsoft are focused on fixing their own mistakes, but they are not responsible when you make a mistake or when a malicious act stops your business cold. 64% of data loss incidents are actually human error. I can't tell you how many times over the past year, the past 10, 15 years, that someone realizes they accidentally deleted a whole client directory, 6 months before. And that becomes really hard to restore if you don't have a solution like this in place. So you can go back to a point in time, find the file or folders and restore them. There's also a lot of illegitimate deletion requests. Sync errors can occur, and then you've got hackers, malicious insiders, right? An employee gone rogue, or they know you're going to let them go, or they're upset for whatever reason. They can create a lot of damage. Malware and viruses and ransomware. And most people assume that everything in 365 or Google Workspace is automatically backed up. It kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. And here's what I mean by that. Yes, 365 and Google, Microsoft and Google, they have multiple redundant data servers in different cities that keeps everything synced and backup. If the San Francisco data center goes down, you're automatically flipped to the Chicago data center and your data is safe. However, they are not responsible to back up your data, keeping different point in time restore points. If someone accidentally deletes a file and you realize 2 months later, it's not their responsibility to help you restore backup of that. They don't do that. Okay? So another couple reasons why it's not truly backed up. When an employee leaves, you have to keep an active license open that you're paying, forever, or else all their data is removed and deleted from their servers. Now, there are some workarounds in 365 where you can convert it to a shared mailbox to retain the data without having to pay for a license, but there's very specific steps to do that. If an employee intentionally tries to cover their tracks, you don't have a separate backup. So again, this is something that's come up a few times over the years. Employee realizes they did something they shouldn't have, they're let go, they do a search, they find all the emails to and from a certain person between certain dates, they delete them, they go to the trash, they select those messages and they delete them again. So now they're gone. There's no way to prove that they did that if you don't have a third-party backup of all your 365 or Google data. Okay? They can do whatever they want, and then you go to this cloud-to-cloud SaaS backup that you're using, and you can easily restore and find that information. A lot of these tools also offer a self-service e-discovery function, which makes data requests a breeze. You just put in, again, who it's from and to, the date range, and boom, finds everything. And this is going to back up everything in your email, your contacts, your calendars, as well as your files. So SharePoint or OneDrive for 365 or Google Drive for Google Workspace.
Tom, let me just interject because you made a statement that I wonder how many people are aware of. So if you have employees leave, and we all have employees come and go, right? It's just part of the nature of business. If you don't keep that email address going forever, you lose all the emails that person sent. So in order to maintain the historic record, you can't, if I'm saying it correctly, ever terminate an email address from an old employee. You make it inactive or something, but you've got to keep it going to keep that historic data.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't aware of
Wow.
this, and they're like, well, Susie's gone, delete her email account because I don't want to
For
keep paying for her
years,
life.
she's gone. Why keep it? But you need
Yeah.
to.
And so there is a workaround. I know in 365, I'd say 90% of our clients are on 365. So I know we have a specific workaround and process that my team does as part of our exiting user, for our clients. And Google Workspace, I don't know what the workaround, but it's the same thing with Google Workspace. So again, right there, that's a huge reason just to have this kind of solution in place, a third-party backup
Well,
of all your data that retains everything.
what you're also demonstrating, which is maybe security layer 9, you got to have a partner that understands this stuff, because as a non-IT person, I would have not imagined, and it makes sense now that you're saying it, that you lose all the email from that long ago terminated employee.
Yeah, and that's what every single person on this webinar, that's what you're paid for. People pay you because it's the stuff you don't know. That's why clients seek you out, because you know those things and you can help them. If there's no problems or solutions, there's no need for any kind of business, and you're helping clients, find solutions to their problems. So, yeah. All right, the last one here, security layer number 8 is an automated phishing defense platform. So if you remember the old spam filters that you had to add on, to Entourage, to weed out spam because the built-in spam didn't work, right? Everyone used to have to buy an additional spam add-on. So today's spam filters don't work against phishing emails. That's why you continually receive phishing emails in your inbox. And so the automated phishing defense platform is an AI, so artificial intelligence based proactive phishing protection that helps intercept all kinds of advanced email threats, whether you're on 365 or Google Workspace. And this protects your entire team from cyber criminals posing as trusted contacts, providing substantial security against disasters like ransomware, business email compromise, account takeovers, and other advanced threats. And this is able to detect and block 99.9% of sophisticated email attacks before they even reach employee inboxes. So you can make an easy argument for just buying time back, right there, that they're being removed and they're not even hitting your inbox. As well as the uncertainty, right? Every time you forward and send an email to your IT team, say, hey, is this legit or not? That's time out of your day, and it adds up. So let me tell you a story here about an account takeover with an opposing counsel that almost got our client as well. This story is extremely common. It's extremely scary. And if I haven't gotten your attention yet, I'm about to get it here. So Jason was a young lawyer, tech savvy enough to realize that he needed better cybersecurity protections in place, but too busy building his firm to address it. He had actually reached out to us and rescheduled 3 times in just a few months. I really liked him. Usually that's, they get put into kind of a black box and it's like, sorry. But out of the blue, he emailed me on October 7th, 2020, and he said, our opposing counsel's email was hacked. The perpetrator had emailed Jason asking him to open a file. I just sent a document for you now, they wrote. Please check your inbox or junk folder and refer to the documentation as it's very important. Now, this was not an email out of the blue. Jason had been in communication with his opposing counsel, so this email was not unexpected. To be safe, Jason replied and requested the file be sent directly. Good, kudos for him, right? Here's where it gets crazier. Within minutes, he got a reply. Thanks for your kind response. The requested email is legitimate and has been secured to your email. Kindly proceed to the document with your email to gain access and let me know your thoughts immediately. Do you realize how advanced this is? So here's what happened. Today, it's very common for cyber criminals to lurk in the shadows when they access your account. The old days, they log into your account, you'd know about it right away because Viagra offers were sent to everyone in your address book, right? Nowadays, they stay in your inbox. They read everything in your inbox. They read your sent folder, all of your recent messages. Isn't it wonderful how great the indexing is in Google and 365? Anything you want to find, you type in a couple keywords, boom, you've got it, going back over 10,000, 50,000 emails. So this is a wonderful tool for cyber criminals once they get into your email as well. So they've got a list of keywords. They're going to search for routing number, wire transfer, social security number, SSN, right? They're going to type in password. They're going to put PW, that one time you sent a password, but you were smart. You didn't put the username and the password in the same email account, right? You sent 2 separate emails. That one time you put PW, they're going to search, they're going to find that immediately. Creepy, right? Now, this story immediately shifted my client's reality because his opposing counsel was a small 2-attorney law firm, just like his. And Jason never wanted to go through that experience. And so in this example, the automated phishing defense platform would have flagged and intercepted that email, stopping the attacker dead in his tracks. Jason signed up for BoboGuard the next day, and we had all 8 layers implemented within a week. So far we've talked about the 8 security layers that you need to protect your law firm. So we've got cybersecurity training, unlimited phishing campaigns, simulated phishing campaigns and reporting, policy templates, dark web monitoring, a team-based password vault, the tools on your Macs and PCs that run maintenance, patching, and antivirus and web protection, backup for your data in 365 and Google Workspace, and then the automated phishing defense platform. But here's the most important thing you need to understand. The question is not whether you will be attacked, but when. And the real question is, will you be prepared or not? Now you might be wondering, okay, what's my next step? Your next step is to take some of the resources that I have for you. So your first free resource here is the security checklist for busy lawyers. Again, if you are a CPA, everything in that checklist applies to you 100%. So that's an easy one, kind of has all the solutions that we talked about today. The second free resource is a cybersecurity strategy call. So this is a 45-minute meeting we do via Zoom, where we're going to define your biggest security risks and concerns. We're going to identify the correct strategies to protect your firm, build a custom plan to meet your ethical duties and give you peace of mind. And then we're also going to answer all the questions that you might have about your unique situation. The third free resource is that we're going to get you the results of a comprehensive dark web scan performed on your firm's primary domain and your primary personal email address, and which means that you're going to know exactly which of your passwords are currently accessible to cyber criminals. When I first got the result, when we started using this tool years ago, I was lucky. We had none for the business, but I did my personal email and I had 27 hits. I think there were a whole bunch, or there were a number, and a couple of them were some of the passwords that I reused. And so I went out and changed 27 logins that night. It was not fun or exciting, but I slept a lot better. Again, you're going to be changing some passwords, after you get that. And last here is a customized cybersecurity plan that's built around your primary cybersecurity risks and concerns, along with a list of recommended cybersecurity solutions to protect your firm. You're going to receive that after completing the cybersecurity strategy call. And at the end of our time together, and it's not going to be me, at the end of spending time with someone on our team doing the cybersecurity strategy call, you're going to have a much better understanding of the threats, both known and unknown, that you need to protect your firm from. You're going to learn the most modern and effective solutions out there that'll provide protection, and you'll have a customized plan with specifics that give you certainty in the actions you have to take to get peace of mind. So again, the checklist, the strategy call, the dark web scan findings report, and the customized cybersecurity plan is everything you're going to receive. And on the next, a couple more slides here. To claim your free resources, you can go to bobegard.com/strategy, or if you've got your iPhone or your Android, you can just point it at the screen and maybe that QR code will work for you. I'm trying to use the snazzy latest marketing things.
Tom, if they get the download of the PowerPoint, can they just scan it, the QR code from the PowerPoint?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
That's another way you guys can get it.
Thank you. Yeah. But here's the bottom line. Your cyber threat is real. Your client data is at risk, but it doesn't have to be. And so what we shared with you today is exactly what you need to do to make sure that it doesn't happen to you or your firm or your professional practice. So if you want to take advantage of it, just go to bobegard.com/strategy. And that's all I've got.
Tom, let's talk for a second before we wrap up. And everyone, I hope you appreciate this. I think Tom is, whether this is how he markets or not, it's a gracious offer. And if you're not sure if you got the right stuff in place, the statistics that he told you, and I've seen pretty horrifying statistics on data breaches for all sorts of professionals. Just, call your IT person, get the freebie from Tom, but you want to follow up on this. And that's really why myself, Peak, and ILS felt that this would be a great service for all of you. And that's why we did it. We usually stick to our swim lane of estate planning webinars, but during COVID, we did a bunch of stuff on working remotely because we knew that was relevant to a lot of you. And, I think this is in the same vein, something that's relevant to probably all of you. Tom, if somebody's got an email address that's at AOL or Hotmail, do they automatically have a problem? Should they address that immediately?
If they're using that for their business, absolutely. This is something I've been beating this drum for 17 years, and I've helped people kind of make the switch. Like, if you're running a professional business, you need a professional email address. The best lawyer in Dallas at gmail.com is not or Mike Smith attorney at Yahoo is not a business email. Now, there's a security risk there as well, because there's different terms of service that Google has for their Gmail addresses versus Google Workspace, right? There's different protections if you have a professional primary domain versus, what I call kind of the, public personal email address. So yeah, I would definitely be.
I bring up this question because I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't get an email from a colleague, whether it's an attorney, an accountant, financial advisor, with those type of email addresses.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you from a marketing perspective, a perception perspective. It doesn't look great because I think it suggests not proper planning. But what you've added to that is not just a marketing issue, it's a serious security issue. And I would suggest folks, and I try to take my own medicine about, whether it's Adapt or Slack or something else when we're doing planning, but I want the same protections on my personal email as I have for my business, because we all use our personal email for all sorts of banking and other purposes. You want to protect yourself too. And, if you bill for your time, as many of us do, the cost and lost time of trying to deal with the nightmare of even your personal email being breached. Second comment that stood out for me, and again, I've seen this and I commented before, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but I see it so often where colleagues use the same business email, and clients do this, their business email for all their personal stuff. We should advise clients to think about, hey, why are you having your estate and tax planning email sent to a business email address? If your business ends up in a lawsuit, that may all be discoverable. If your business is breached or you have an employee that gets angry at you, why should they ever be able to find access to all your personal stuff? So those are just two of the things. I thought you did a great job, Tom. And if you have any closing remarks, if not, we'll wrap up.
Thank you. Honestly, I think I said it all. I mean, my mission is to be a hero to small business owners. I know how hard they work. I'm a small business owner, and I know my family depends on it, and your employees' families all depend on you. And it's like, it blows my mind that not enough people have the urgency, and it kills me. I've seen so many people, get affected, get hit by a data breach. None of them ever thought it was going to happen. And like the amount of time and stress and worry that you're dealing with yourself as you go through it, everyone on your team. I mean, 60% of businesses go out of business after 60% after they suffer a data breach within 6 months. And those are small businesses. I think a lot of the normal numbers you see in the news, it's like, the average cost of a data breach is $2.8 million. Those are horrible, because as soon as you hear statistics like that as a small business owner, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't concern me. I had $650,000 in revenue last year. But for a small business to get hit and the average cost, I think, is $58,000, it's not the 2.6 million headline grabbing thing, but that's the kind of check that's going to put most businesses, completely out. And you work so hard to serve your clients and to do good by them and to create a place for your entire team, and you're putting all that at risk because you're not being proactive, and you're taking the ostrich approach. It's like, oh, I'm going to stick my head in the sand and I don't think anything will happen to me. Cross my fingers. So.
Let me frame it a little differently. Whether you're an attorney, an accountant, a financial advisor, an insurance consultant, we're really selling one thing, and we're selling. Don't feel it's professional. You're not selling. We're selling peace of mind, right? If we give somebody a good estate plan or proper insurance coverage or a good asset allocation model, as accountants, you tend to advise on a broad array of things. We're really, I think, ultimately, when it comes down to it, selling our clients peace of mind, and we're giving it to them. If we don't address this, are we really giving them the peace of mind they're coming to us for? If you have, I can't remember it exactly, best as, a tax attorney in Dallas at yahoo.com or whatever example Tom gave, if you have an unprotected email account, if you're mixing personal and email accounts, you're not sending the message to the client that you want, that I'm here to give you peace of mind. And there are clients that are plenty sophisticated that understand this, not just tech clients, lots of clients. And as this stuff continues, look at the statistics Tom gave, they're horrifying. Clients are becoming more and more aware of this. We need to do this to keep our image up that we are really selling you peace of mind, because if we're not being secure about their data, my gosh, look what we're exposing our own clients to. So anyhow, I want to thank Tom. I thought it was a very insightful webinar. I won't sleep tonight, but it was very insightful. Thank you. I may call you at 3 in the morning just because I'll be up being nervous about this. And thank you everyone for joining us, and good luck with everything. Take care.